By 1778, the revolution was losing more than battles, it was losing secrets. British forces occupying New York had transformed the city into intelligence hub, where information flowed freely among officers, loyalist merchants, and government officials who believed their conversations were secure within fortress that seemed impregnable to American military operations. The occupation created opportunity and danger as Washington recognized that military victories alone could not win war without understanding British plans and capabilities. The British occupation turned city into intelligence capital of war, where strategic decisions were made, troop movements originated, and supply operations were coordinated for entire British military effort in America. New York's importance as British headquarters meant that information gathered there could provide insights into British intentions across multiple theatres, making penetration of British command structure potentially more valuable than winning battlefield engagements that cost lives without producing strategic advantages. Washington realized he needed more than muskets. He needed spies who could operate behind enemy lines and extract information that would allow continental forces to anticipate British movements and exploit weaknesses that military reconnaissance could never discover. The war in shadows required different skills than conventional warfare, demanding courage of different kind as operatives risked execution as spies rather than honorable treatment as prisoners of war if captured. Intelligence gathering became an essential component of revolutionary strategy, as Washington understood that inferior continental forces needed information advantage to compensate for British superiority in numbers, training, and equipment. The decision to create organized espionage network marked transformation in how Washington fought war, recognizing that knowledge of enemy plans could multiply effectiveness of limited American resources through strategic positioning that avoided British strengths while exploiting their vulnerabilities. Before there was CIA, there was Culper Ring. Washington authorized secret network in 1778 to infiltrate British lines and gather intelligence that conventional military operations could not obtain, creating America's first organized espionage operation, with systematic procedures for recruiting agents, securing communications, and protecting operatives' identities. The network represented innovation in American military practice, establishing principles of intelligence tradecraft that would influence American espionage for centuries. Washington's authorization created framework for systematic intelligence gathering, rather than relying on occasional volunteers or captured documents that provided incomplete and unreliable information. The Culper Ring operated with clear chain of command, standardized reporting procedures, and security protocols designed to protect agents even if part of network was compromised. This professional approach distinguished American intelligence from amateur efforts that had characterized earlier espionage attempts. Trust became deadliest weapon of all, as success depended on agents' willingness to risk execution while maintaining absolute secrecy about their activities and identities. The network functioned only because participants trusted each other and trusted Washington to protect their secrets and use information they risked their lives obtaining. Breaking that trust would mean not just operational failure, but death for exposed agents who could not defend themselves once British discovered their activities. The birth of American intelligence represented Washington's recognition that modern warfare required information as much as ammunition, that strategic advantage came from knowing enemy plans before they were executed, and that investing in espionage could produce results far exceeding costs in money and risk compared to conventional military operations that consumed resources without guaranteeing success. He was farmer, not spy. Abraham Woodhull lived quietly in Setauket on Long Island's North Shore, managing family farm and avoiding attention from British forces who controlled region and who viewed local population with suspicion, born from knowledge that many harbored patriot sympathies, despite outward compliance with occupation. His life seemed ordinary, defined by agricultural cycles and family obligations rather than by dramatic resistance to British authority. Woodhull became first Culper agent through combination of patriotic conviction and personal connections to Benjamin Tallmadge, childhood friend who had become Washington's intelligence chief and who needed reliable operative in British-occupied territory. His recruitment demonstrated that effective spies were often unremarkable people whose ordinary lives provided cover for extraordinary activities, whose familiarity with local communities allowed movement without arousing suspicion that strangers would immediately attract. Reluctance, fear, and quiet bravery characterized Woodhull's service as he struggled with terror of discovery and execution that haunted every moment of his espionage work. He was not a natural spy, lacking training or temperament for deception, but his commitment to independence and trust in Talmadge overcame fears that would have paralyzed less determined person. His courage was not absence of fear, but continuation of dangerous work, despite constant terror. A patriot hidden behind ordinary life, Woodhull exemplified how revolution depended on countless individuals whose contributions went unrecognized because effectiveness required anonymity. His willingness to risk everything while receiving no public acknowledgement demonstrated revolutionary commitment that transcended personal glory, serving cause through means that could never be celebrated publicly without destroying their effectiveness and endangering lives of everyone involved in network. In shadows, one man wrote rules. Major Benjamin Talmadge organized Culper Ring with attention to security and operational discipline that transformed amateur intelligence gathering into professional espionage network capable of penetrating British command structure. Without detection, his background as cavalry officer gave him understanding of military operations, while his intelligence and organizational skills allowed him to create systems that protected agents while ensuring reliable information flow to Washington's headquarters. Washington's intelligence chief understood that successful espionage required more than brave individuals willing to gather information. It demanded systematic procedures for recruitment, communication, encryption, and security that would protect network even if individual agents were compromised. Talmadge created operational protocols that anticipated problems and established contingencies, building redundancy into system so that network could continue functioning despite setbacks that would destroy less carefully organized operations. Discipline, encryption, and trust bound invisible army of agents who never met each other and who often did not know each other's real identities, relying on Talmadge's coordination to connect their separate contributions into coherent intelligence picture. The system worked because Talmadge enforced strict security protocols that limited information exposure, used encryption to protect communications if intercepted, and built trust through reliable support that agents needed to continue dangerous work. Talmadge's mastery of intelligence tradecraft established American espionage on professional foundation, demonstrating that systematic organization and security consciousness could create effective networks that gathered crucial information while protecting operatives from British counterintelligence efforts that would have destroyed less disciplined operations through penetration or detection of careless communications and movements. New York was British Empire's fortress and America's greatest opportunity. The city served as British military headquarters where generals planned campaigns, coordinated logistics, and received intelligence about Continental Army movements and capabilities. British High Command's concentration in New York made city invaluable intelligence target because penetrating British decision-making process could provide insights into strategic intentions across entire theatre of operations. Loyalist networks filled streets with informers and sympathizers who reported suspicious activities to British authorities, creating hostile environment where patriot agents risked exposure through casual conversations or chance encounters with people whose loyalties could not be determined until too late. The city's divided population made trust impossible and suspicion universal, requiring constant vigilance from agents who could never know whether person they spoke with might report them to British security forces. Candlelit taverns became sites of intelligence gathering as British officers socialized in public spaces where carefully positioned agents could overhear conversations about troop movements, supply problems, and strategic debates. Coded notes passed through crowds as agents used crowds and commercial activities to conduct covert communications without arousing suspicion from watchers who could not distinguish espionage from ordinary business transactions. Danger lurked in every corner as British counterintelligence worked to identify American spies, while Patriot agents attempted to gather information without exposing themselves through careless behavior or unlucky coincidence. The enemy's city was a landscape of constant threat, where single mistake could mean arrest, interrogation, and execution, as spy without protections that prisoners of war received under military conventions of era. A letter written in invisible ink began revolution within revolution. Early correspondence between Washington, Talmadge, and First Culper reports established communication protocols that would characterize networks' operations throughout war, using invisible ink formulas developed by American chemists to hide intelligence reports in seemingly innocent letters that British censors would not recognize as containing military information. The technical innovation allowed agents to communicate safely, even if letters were intercepted and inspected. Secret codes transformed ordinary words into encrypted messages that required corresponding codebooks to decipher, creating additional security layer that protected information even if invisible ink was detected. The combination of chemical concealment and cryptographic protection meant that communications remained secure through multiple levels of British scrutiny, requiring British to both detect invisible writing and break encryption before gaining access to intelligence that agents risked their lives obtaining. Dead drops allowed agents to pass information without meeting directly, reducing risk that surveillance would connect operatives to each other and expose network through observation of suspicious contacts. Materials were hidden in predetermined locations where they could be retrieved by couriers without agents needing to encounter each other in ways that might attract British attention or create evidence of conspiracy if observed by informers or counterintelligence officers. How invisible ink began flowing through enemy territory represented triumph of scientific innovation and operational security over British attempts to control information flow in occupied city. The technical systems that Culper Ring employed demonstrated American capacity for sophisticated covert operations that matched or exceeded British counterintelligence capabilities despite British advantages in resources and experience. Every secret needed courier, and every courier risked noose. The Culper Ring expanded beyond Woodhull to include specialists who performed specific functions essential to networks' operations, creating division of labor that increased efficiency while limiting each agent's exposure to information that could compromise entire network if they were captured and interrogated. New recruits brought skills and access that enhanced intelligence gathering while distributing risk across larger group. Anna Strong used her position as respectable woman in Setauket to signal when courier boats could safely cross Sound without British detection, her domestic activities providing perfect cover for espionage that British observers would never suspect. Caleb Brewster commanded whaleboat that transported intelligence across Long Island Sound between British-occupied territory and continental-controlled Connecticut, braving British naval patrols and dangerous waters to maintain communication, link essential to network's function. Robert Townsend operated coffee house in Manhattan, where British officers gathered socially, his position allowing him to overhear conversations and observe behaviors that revealed British intentions and capabilities. His recruitment brought Culper Ring into heart of British military establishment, providing access to information that could not be obtained through external observation or occasional contacts with lower-level sources. Ordinary lives, woven into extraordinary danger, characterized all Culper agents, whose effectiveness depended on maintaining normal appearances while conducting activities that would mean execution if discovered. Their courage was not dramatic heroism, but sustained performance of dangerous roles over months and years, maintaining operational security while managing fear and isolation that came from living double lives where single mistake could doom them and everyone connected to their network. No one knew each other's real names, not even General. Security through secrecy formed foundation of Culper Ring's survival, as agents operated under pseudonyms that protected their identities even within network, ensuring that captured agent could not reveal names that they did not know, regardless of interrogation methods British employed. The system limited damage from potential compromises, while allowing network to continue functioning even if individual agents were arrested. Use of pseudonyms, numbers, and coded writing created layers of protection that required British to penetrate multiple security systems before gaining intelligence that could destroy network. Washington was designated as number 711 in cipher system. Woodhull operated as Samuel Culper Sr., and other agents received similar code names that appeared in correspondence without revealing actual identities to anyone who intercepted communications. The brilliance of code system lay in its simplicity and effectiveness, relatively straightforward. Substitution cipher, using numbers for common words and names, provided adequate security against British cryptanalysis capabilities, while remaining simple enough that agents could use it without extensive training that might have required dangerous meetings or documentary evidence that could expose network if discovered. The practical balance between security and usability made system sustainable over years of operations. Code of silence extended beyond operational communications to encompass entire culture of network, where agents understood that discussing their activities with anyone outside trusted circle meant betraying comrades whose lives depended on absolute discretion. This psychological discipline was perhaps more important than technical security measures because human weakness of talking about dangerous activities they were engaged in could destroy network faster than any British counterintelligence operation. Black petticoat on clothesline could mean life or death. Anna Strong's signal system used laundry hanging in her yard to communicate when Caleb Brewster's boat was ready to receive intelligence from Setauket, with black petticoat indicating Brewster's presence and number of handkerchiefs showing which cove he was using for pickup. The domestic tableau appeared completely innocent to casual observers, while conveying precise tactical information to agents who understood significance of arrangements. The ingenious communication system demonstrated how everyday activities could be transformed into espionage tradecraft through pre-arranged codes that allowed transmission of operational information without suspicious meetings or written messages that might be intercepted. Strong's laundry was visible to entire community, but only Culper agents understood its meaning, creating public signal that functioned as secure communication channel through hiding intelligence in plain sight. Women in espionage provided essential support that made Culper Ring's operations possible, while remaining largely invisible to British authorities, who assumed that women were not involved in military or political activities. This gender bias created operational opportunities as women like Strong could conduct espionage under cover of domestic activities that British observers dismissed as irrelevant to security concerns, allowing women to operate with less scrutiny than men faced in same communities. Silent strength in plain sight characterized women's contributions to revolutionary intelligence operations, their work essential but unrecognized because effectiveness required anonymity and because contemporary assumptions about women's proper roles made their espionage activities literally unthinkable to British officials who could not imagine respectable women engaging in activities that violated social expectations about feminine behavior and interests. Robert Townsend served tea to British officers while stealing their secrets. His position operating coffee house in Manhattan placed him at center of British social life, where officers relaxed and spoke freely about military matters they would have guarded carefully in more formal settings. His service role made him invisible to customers who discussed sensitive information without considering that civilians serving them might be listening carefully and remembering everything he heard for reporting to Continental Intelligence. Townsend's life as Culper Jr. required maintaining perfect cover as loyal subject, who supported British occupation while secretly gathering intelligence that would help defeat forces he pretended to serve. The duality demanded extraordinary psychological discipline as he balanced contradictory roles without revealing tensions that might have aroused suspicion from British customers or loyalist neighbours who would have reported any suspicious behaviour to authorities. Operating inside British-occupied Manhattan meant living constantly in danger of exposure through chance encounter, careless word, or unlucky coincidence that might connect Townsend to Patriot activities despite his careful maintenance of loyalist cover. The stress of sustained deception wore on agents who could never relax or forget that they were performing role where failure meant execution and where success required perfection in maintaining false identity. Patriotism beneath mask of loyalty, exemplified moral courage required of agents who endured suspicion and contempt from fellow patriots who believed their loyalist cover was genuine, accepting misunderstanding and potential ostracism as price of serving cause through means that could not be publicly acknowledged without destroying effectiveness and endangering lives of everyone connected to their network. Operations. British hunted ghosts and never caught one. British counterintelligence efforts to uncover American spy network operating in New York failed despite determined investigation and sophisticated surveillance because Culper Ring's security protocols prevented British from connecting agents to each other or to intelligence that was reaching Washington. Major John Andre commanded British intelligence operations while simultaneously conducting espionage that would lead to Benedict Arnold's betrayal plot, creating ironic situation where British intelligence chief was himself engaged in conspiracy. British attempts to penetrate Patriot networks through informers and surveillance could not overcome Culper Ring's disciplined compartmentalization that limited each agent's knowledge to their specific role, preventing captured agents from revealing information that could expose broader network. The security through ignorance meant that British could not work backwards from one compromised agent to unravel entire operation because individual agents literally did not know details that British needed to identify other operatives. Culper Ring's intelligence helped expose Arnold's treason before it destroyed West Point by providing information about British activities that contributed to capture of Andre when he was returning from meeting with Arnold to finalize betrayal plan. The network's reporting on British movements and unusual activities around Hudson River area raised suspicions that eventually led to Andre's interception and subsequent revelation of Arnold's conspiracy to surrender West Point to British forces. Tension between espionage and counter-espionage created invisible war, where British and American intelligence operations competed to gather information while protecting their own secrets, with Culper Ring's superior security and operational discipline allowing American network to survive and function throughout war, while British failed to penetrate or destroy organization, despite knowing that significant intelligence leak was occurring somewhere in occupied territory. One coded letter saved revolution itself. The Culper Ring's intelligence about British activities contributed to foiling Andre and Arnold's plan to betray West Point, preventing disaster that would have given British control of Hudson River and potentially split Continental Army, while dealing devastating blow to Patriot morale. The conspiracy's exposure through combination of Culper intelligence and Andre's unfortunate capture preserved American strategic position and prevented British from achieving through treason what they could not accomplish through military operations. How intelligence preserved Washington's army demonstrated value of systematic espionage that provided early warning of threats that conventional military reconnaissance could never detect. The network's ability to gather information about British intentions and movements gave Washington strategic advantage that multiplied effectiveness of his limited forces by allowing him to position troops where they would be most effective and to avoid British traps that might have destroyed Continental Army. Quiet victories that changed history received no glory, no medals, and no public recognition because revealing Culper Ring's role would have exposed agents to British retaliation and destroyed network's effectiveness for future operations. The agents who saved West Point and prevented Arnold's betrayal from succeeding could never be publicly acknowledged or rewarded, accepting anonymity as necessary price of continuing their dangerous work in service of cause that depended on their sustained sacrifice. The invisible battle for West Point exemplified how intelligence operations could produce strategic results equal to battlefield victories, but without dramatic visibility that made conventional military success easy to recognize and celebrate, creating a situation where most important contributions to revolutionary success came from people whose names and activities remained unknown to contemporary Americans and to history for nearly 2 centuries after war ended. He commanded armies and shadows. Washington's direct supervision of Culper Ring demonstrated his understanding that intelligence was an essential component of military strategy rather than peripheral activity that could be delegated to subordinates without his personal attention. His involvement in recruitment, operational planning, and agent protection showed deep respect for secrecy and loyalty that made effective espionage possible in an era when such activities were considered dishonorable by many military professionals. Washington's correspondence with Talmadge and agents revealed his appreciation for intelligence, tradecraft, and his willingness to protect operatives, even when their safety conflicted with military operational needs. His refusal to compromise agent security for immediate tactical advantages demonstrated understanding that preserving intelligence networks provided long-term strategic value, exceeding short-term gains from exploiting information in ways that might expose sources. Leadership through trust characterized Washington's management of espionage operations, as he relied on agents' judgment and accepted their assessments without demanding verification that would have required exposure of sources or methods. This trust was reciprocal. Agents risked their lives partly because they believed Washington would protect their identities and use information they provided wisely without sacrificing them for temporary advantages. The mind of general who mastered deception understood that winning war required more than battlefield courage and tactical skill. It demanded systematic intelligence gathering, careful protection of sources, and willingness to fight invisible war that produced strategic advantages without dramatic victories that contemporary observers could recognize and celebrate, but that nevertheless determined war's outcome through accumulated knowledge that allowed continental forces to operate more effectively than their material resources suggested was possible. When war ended, they disappeared back into ordinary life. The dissolution of Culper Ring following American victory sent agents home to resume normal existence after years of living double lives and risking execution for espionage that could never be publicly acknowledged. The transition from danger to domestic normality must have been disorienting for people who had sustained extraordinary courage through years of sustained deception and fear, suddenly released from responsibilities that had defined their lives. Members returned home without fame or fortune, despite contributions that had been essential to American victory, accepting anonymity as continuation of sacrifice they had made throughout war when operational security demanded that nobody know their identities or activities. The silence was not imposed but chosen, reflecting understanding that revealing their roles would serve no purpose except satisfying personal vanity, while potentially endangering others who might face retaliation from embittered loyalists. The silence of forgotten heroes who never claimed what they earned demonstrated revolutionary commitment that transcended personal recognition, serving cause through means that specifically required foregoing acknowledgement that other forms of service received. Their willingness to remain anonymous after war ended as absolutely as during hostilities proved that their motivation was genuine patriotism rather than desire for glory that animated some revolutionary leaders who sought recognition for their contributions. The spy who vanished was every Culper agent who returned to farming, commerce, or domestic life without revealing years of dangerous service that had helped win independence, but that could never be commemorated publicly without violating security principles that had kept them alive and effective throughout war. Their disappearance into ordinary life was final act of service to cause they had risked everything to support. For 2 centuries, no one knew their names. The Culper Ring story remained hidden because agents maintained operational security even after war ended, and because Washington protected their identities by destroying correspondence or maintaining coded references that concealed real names from historians who might have exposed them to hostile scrutiny. The rediscovery began only in 20th century, when scholars examining Revolutionary War documents began recognizing patterns suggesting organized intelligence network. Rediscovery of letters, code books, and invisible ink recipes revealed sophisticated espionage operation that previous historians had missed or dismissed as minor element of Revolutionary War story. The gradual accumulation of evidence from archives scattered across multiple repositories allowed reconstruction of networks' operations and identification of agents whose contributions had been completely forgotten despite their essential role in American victory. The slow revelation of America's first true intelligence network transformed understanding of how revolution was won, by demonstrating that victory depended not just on battlefield courage and political leadership, but on systematic intelligence gathering that provided strategic advantages, allowing continental forces to compete effectively against superior British military power. The discovery validated importance of espionage in American military tradition. Secrets uncovered through painstaking historical research restored Culper Ring agents to historical record 2 centuries after their deaths, finally acknowledging contributions that had been deliberately concealed during their lifetimes and accidentally forgotten afterwards. The revelation demonstrated that significant historical achievements can remain unknown for generations when participants choose anonymity and when nature of their contributions makes documentation dangerous or impossible during their era. They fought without firing shot and won war. The Culper Ring's legacy extends beyond specific intelligence gathered to encompass creation of American espionage tradition, emphasizing systematic operations, agent security, and integration of intelligence into strategic decision-making. Their success demonstrated that organized intelligence could produce strategic results exceeding battlefield victories, while requiring different courage from conventional military service, but courage nonetheless essential to achieving independence. Reflection on origins of American espionage reveals that sophisticated intelligence operations existed from Revolution's early years rather than being modern innovation, that founders understood value of systematic information gathering, and that American victory depended partly on ability to penetrate British command structure and anticipate their strategic moves. The Culper Ring established principles and practices that influenced American intelligence services through subsequent centuries. The network's influence on modern intelligence appears in emphasis on agent security, use of technology to protect communications, compartmentalization to limit damage from compromises, and integration of intelligence into operational planning. Modern American espionage services trace their traditions partly to Revolutionary War networks that pioneered tradecraft, still employed by contemporary intelligence organizations operating in far different technological and political environments. Revolution's victory was built not just on battlefields, but in whispers, ink, and courage of agents who risked execution to gather information that gave Continental forces advantages they desperately needed against superior enemy. The Culper Ring proved that wars are won through combination of conventional military operations and invisible intelligence work, that courage takes many forms beyond battlefield heroism, and that nations' independence sometimes depends most on contributions that must remain secret and unacknowledged to be effective. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a positive comment below. It really helps the channel grow and keeps these stories coming.